happy Wednesday, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us on the Transportation and Logistics Clubhouse, powered by Atlanta Dispatch and Humblebee Enterprises. Very excited to be here with a special guest, Hunter Yaw of LogRock Incorporated. Before we begin, though, tonight is all about compliance. But a very, very special thing happened over the course of the last week. Something that I've been awaiting for quite some time. It is, the FMCSA. They released their comments on what the regulations should be put in place upon the whole independent dispatch services. And while they have not made any hard rules, they do believe dispatch services should be required to obtain a surety bond and a brokerage authority if they partake in any of the following six areas. Okay, so if they're doing these things, they do need to go ahead and get that surety bond and apply for that brokerage authority. And that's number one: interact or negotiate a shipment of freight directly with the shipper or shipper representative. So, I mean, that makes sense. That is very, very, very close to the exact thing a broker does. Number two, accept or take compensation for a load from the broker or factoring company, or is involved in any part of the monetary transaction between any of those entities. Again, messing with the money. They're saying that you should have a broker authority. They're not saying in all circumstances that you have to have it, but this is just very general. And again, these are not hard set rules. Okay. Number three, it is going to be arranged for uh, a shipment of freight for a motor carrier where there is no written legal contract with the motor carrier that meets the aforementioned that we just talked about. Again, very broker-esque activity right there. Accept the shipment without a truck carrier, then attempt to find a truck carrier to move the shipment. Number five is name party on the shipping contract. Number six is soliciting to the open market of carriers for the purposes of transporting freight shipment. Okay, so those are the six things, the six ideas or operation types and styles and activities that the FMCSA has said is doing these things. We would recommend, because, like I said, a very, very this is not a something specifically right now that everybody has to adhere to. Actually, this is still a comment period. I think that this is going to be in the comment period for the next 60 days, if I'm not mistaken. So if you agree, let's hear about it. Why don't you leave those comments with the FMCSA? I do want to talk about that more in detail in the near future here on the Transportation and Logistics Clubhouse. And I love to be able to bring on some of my fellow dispatchers, those who run independent dispatch agencies. And, maybe we can get somebody from the FMCSA up here just to hear what their candid thoughts are. So, yeah, I appreciate that. And I know we got Hunter on stage now.
Jory, have I got my voice now?
Hey, what's up, brother? Look, you do, man. I am happy that you are here on stage. I did a whole bunch of talking, and I really want to get your opinion on it. But before we do that, all right, let's actually introduce you, okay? Hunter, what's LogRock, and what's your background? How'd you get into the industry? Did you go to college just knowing one day you would be crushing it in supply chain? And if not, how'd you get into it? So let's just I'm gonna just give you the ball, and you can take it for all those things right there, okay?
All right, thank you. Listen, I mean, my path to supply chain, I'm not sure I've ever met somebody who said, growing up, I knew I was going to work in supply chain. I was going to be in supply chain, except maybe if your parents or your family were in the industry and it's a family business. But like most folks, I kind of found my way to it by accident or fate or luck or whatever you want to call it. I was minding my own business, working at a startup in New York, and I got introduced to a guy called Ricardo Salgado, who is the founder of a digital freight broker called LoadSmart. And he's a really extraordinary guy. He grew up in Colombia in South America, with basically nothing, on the wrong side of the tracks, and got a scholarship to Georgia Tech, actually. And as he got that opportunity, was able to come to the U.S. and study, and ended up going to work in finance for a long time. And he was doing some finance deals related to trucking companies. And he was doing that. He saw, man, it's crazy that the way that freight is brokered is so analog, that it's phone calls and it's emails and it's faxes still sometimes. That's crazy. That's not how it should be. So he decided to start LoadSmart, which is basically built around digitizing and trying to advance to the next level the processes related to freight brokerage, whether that's quoting a rate, whether that's tendering a shipment, track and trace, all that good stuff. So he brought me on there really in the early days. It was maybe 10 or 15 people. And that was 5 years ago. When I left LoadSmart last year, we'd gone from 10 or 15 people, and we're doing maybe a couple $1 million of gross bookings in a year. LoadSmart last year did about $250 million in bookings, and the team had grown to 500 people. So kind of one of those crazy startup experiences of going from nothing to something real fast. LoadSmart was just valued at over $1 billion, which is kind of crazy because I remember when it was just 10 people and we had no idea what we were doing. But that gave me that exposure to the supply chain space and to the opportunities that were there. And so my co-founder now with LogRock and I, we realized one of the things we saw was that trucking companies were just really underserved in terms of the tools that they've been given to help them, do their job. And man, it's hard enough to grow a trucking business as it is. And one of the things we started to really focus on was the compliance. It was the regulation side. And I'm really glad that you talk about it and frame it, Jory, in the context of growth, because that is really where we first and foremost see the pains of compliance coming in. It's when owners are starting to grow. You go from, maybe it starts out as that owner op, and then you get to 3, 4, 5, 6 trucks. At some point, the owner's coming off the road, get up to 5, 6, 7, now 10, and suddenly you realize, man, there's a lot of paperwork I got to manage. I can put some numbers on that for you. If you've got 30 drivers, there are 1,090 documents that the FMCSA, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, wants you to stay on top of. 1,090 documents. I got to tell you, man, most days I can't remember where my driver's license is, much less stay on top of 1,090 documents. It's a lot that the government asks trucking companies to do. And that number only increases over time as they add more things like, the clearinghouse, for example, is a new addition. That wasn't a thing a couple of years ago. Well, there it is now. You were talking at the top of the program about new rules, new suggestions. FMCSA doesn't tend to delete old rules. They tend to just add new ones. So, LogRock is here to help folks out to manage that. So we build software that helps trucking companies stay compliant. And we digitize driver qualification files. We automate the process of auditing driver logs, hours of service, letting you know when documents are about to expire, medical cards, CDLs, as well as your equipment. So important things like your tractor and trailer registration, your IFTA. We're basically staying on top of all that stuff for trucking companies to try to make it much easier for them to stay compliant. And if they do get pulled into an audit, or God forbid, after an accident, they get pulled into a lawsuit, LogRock is here to help them be in a much better position to be able to manage everything, because the FMCSA or the lawyers, whoever gets involved, can see that they got their ducks in a row, they've crossed their T's, they've dotted their I's from a compliance perspective, and our technology helps them do that.
Nice, nice. Well, hey, man, that was a great overview. It was a mouthful. You got through it very gracefully. I can't lie to you, man. It was
Thank you.
that yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Look, but you said a lot of interesting things, especially about your experience looking at a company when it was 10 to 12 employees, barely hitting a million, and now they just got valued at over $1 billion. How, for you and your background, being a product manager, being a chief product officer, and then having that exposure to working into a startup that at one point was decided that it was destined to become a unicorn. How did that like shape your mentality when LogRock Incorporated came into existence? Like when you had that initial idea, what did that type of exposure and experience do for you?
That's a good question. I learned so much from the guys who founded LoadSmart, and I was fortunate to get to work closely with them. It takes a lot to build something from nothing, and there's a lot of people in transportation and supply chain who understand that. I'm not sure there's any other industry in the US that has more people with that kind of entrepreneurial build something from nothing mentality. And I learned a lot by getting to work directly for and with the guys who had that idea to start the business. Both of them were kind of they were doing their own thing before. Neither of them came from transportation. They basically gave up pretty successful careers. One of them was a banker, the other one was a lawyer, and they gave it all up to start a freight brokerage from scratch. And just watching everything that goes into that, how to build a culture, how to build a team, how to stay committed, how to stick with it when it's tough, how to communicate the message of what you're doing and how you're different and why it matters, how to take care of your customers, how to take care of your employees, what kind of people you want to hire, what kind of people you want to fire, and how to do that. Building partnerships, building relationships, learning how much of transportation supply chain. Man, people say it's a relationship industry. Who you care about, who you help, and they help you and build those networks, those introductions, because that's also such a big piece of it. An industry where sure it needs more technology, but it's also built on relationships and seeing that in action and seeing them build that business and then thinking, all right, now I want to try. But building on all the things that you see as you kind of watch that from the inside, that was definitely a big part of it, and I'm grateful to have had that opportunity, right? Not everybody gets to kind of sit in the front seat and watch that. And that was certainly a big part, just to be able to see that, watch that happen, and learn, and try to not repeat the mistakes, and try to indeed repeat the things that went well and that worked, and to keep that grit and that commitment, and remember that no matter what happens, you just got to keep going.
Nice, nice. How good does it feel when you come upon like a an issue, an area that could be a pitfall, but it was something that you had already seen in your past and you knew how to navigate it. Like what kind of confidence does that give you?
Ooh, it's a feeling of relief because
Yeah.
there's so many things every single day. I don't have to tell you this. Anyone who's an entrepreneur, there's so many things you see every day that you've never seen before, and maybe you're never going to see again, but nobody cares. You can't stop and say, "Oh, guys, I might get this wrong. I'm sorry. I've never had to deal with this." But nobody cares. You just got to find the solution no matter what. So when you do get those moments, it's a good question. When you do get those moments when you think, "All right, hang on, this one I've seen before. Here I know what to do." That's a good feeling because it does give you that extra confidence, and you need a few of those because if we're all human, and if every single problem you see every single day, you got no idea where to start, that'll burn you out. It's a little bit like trying to climb a wall. If you can get that first foothold, that first point where you get somewhere to put your hands and somewhere to put your feet, and get that first kind of step up, it gives you that confidence that, okay, I'm off the ground now, I can do this, and there's going to be a few along the way, maybe a lot along the way, where you see something you've never seen before. But it is very important, like you said, to grab onto those moments when you think, all right, this one I know what to do with. This is a pitch I can hit. You know what I mean? I've seen this one before, and to get the confidence that gives you, because no matter what, most of the time that's not going to be the case. It's going to end up being things you've never seen before. And I hear that from trucking company owners too that we work with. I mean, stuff that I'll call an owner and say, "Hey man, how's it going?" "Oh, a little tough. One of my guys, was stealing my tractor the other day. Got chased by a police helicopter. Ended up having to file that report and explain that to my insurance company." I'm like, man, where, where, so you're the guy I was seeing on the news? Yeah, no, that was my truck. That was, oh, okay, got it. And it's true. Transportation is true in technology. Every day you're going to see something you've never seen before, but you gotta gain the confidence from the ones where you do know what to do, because that gives you that faith, that belief that there's something you can draw on. Then for the ones where you got no idea what's happening.
Right, right. No, I feel it, man. I definitely hear you. I mean, and agreed. It's a lot easier when you get a couple of those small wins under your belt, so that it does give you the confidence that you're moving in the right way. Because sometimes the debt can be stacked against you, and it seems like a very, very, very trying, idea, concept, or endeavor. But man, what I've learned as an entrepreneur is you just got to get over that. You just got to keep pushing. And if you keep pushing, I promise you, you're going to get what you want. And at that point, it's about protecting it, about structuring it in such a way that it can actually scale, easily, seamlessly, instead of, just becoming that burden on you where you got to do so much work all the time that you have no other, nothing else that you can do with your time. So I appreciate you, giving me that response. Now, for you, with your company, when did you guys get started? What year?
Last year, it's almost exactly a year now.
Hey, congratulations, man. A lot of good stuff can happen in a year. I mean, even I've interviewed Shannon Breen, Freight Vana, and those folks are on fire. In one
Oh,
year, they
they
have
are.
grown their company so much, and with a lot of integrity and just I like them a lot. So, hey, congratulations, man.
I'm a fan of theirs as well. I mean, listen, I used to work with a guy who spent his whole career in startups, and he used to say startup years are like dog years. Every year feels like seven. So if
Right,
you can make it
right.
to the end of the first one, that feels good. It probably feels like you went through 7 years in 12 months, but it's also it's a milestone, and that's another part of it. And I think sometimes we all forget to do this is to take a second to celebrate. Hey, we made it a year. Or, hey, we picked up another customer. You can get so lost in the stress of it day to day that you also forget to celebrate the wins. And I think that's part of it too. Honestly, until you asked me, it hadn't even occurred to me. We're coming up on our 1 year anniversary, so there we go.
Yeah,
Gotta
no, I
remember
feel
that.
it. Take that time. Take that time. I mean, this is not me telling you. This is me telling everybody because we all can use that reminder to celebrate those small wins. For you, now that you guys have been in the game for almost a year, do you accept all customers, or because some trucking companies are real janky, man. I can't lie to you. Some of them, they some of them are crazy. Now, do you have a baseline? Do you interview them? And is there anything that you would actually say, you know what? No, I think we're gonna have to pass on this one.
We do. No one's ever asked me that before, but it shows that you are close to the industry and you know how things really work. Because just about every other business, you think, oh man, no, a customer's a customer. But the thing about trucking is that it is such an amazing mix. You'll meet some folks that are just the most honest, hardworking, dedicated people you've ever come across, whether they're drivers, dispatchers, owners, safety managers. I mean, there's just a lot of good people in transportation. There's also folks that are trying to cut corners, and everybody has their reasons. Maybe they're having a tough time, or they just really need to make it work. And our role isn't to judge, but what I will say is that as a compliance company, as a company that takes responsibility for helping our customers make sure that they don't run into trouble, if you don't care in the first place, we can't help you. And that was actually one of the first things we learned when we first started selling the product. I mean, it took us a long time to kind of build out the core tool, because as anyone trucking will tell you, there's a lot you got to cover to be compliant. But once we got to that baseline and we said, all right, we're ready. We got tools that can help people do this. We went out to market, started selling. We thought, well, let's start by talking to people who just went through an audit, or let's start by talking to trucking companies that just got that conditional status, or that are really having the issues with their safety scores, or it looks like, oh man, if you look, you can see their hours of service, they've got some problems, their maintenance, they got some issues. We can help them with that. And so we would go and reach out to those companies. And what we realized was, unfortunately, a lot of the time, the reason that folks are struggling with their scores is because they didn't care in the first place. And I like to say that LogRock is a little bit like a gym membership. Just having the membership doesn't get you doesn't get you where you want to go. You got to use it. You got to go. You got to stay involved. You got to be active. We'll make it possible for you, but we can't do it on our own, and we're not going to do it for you. You got to be involved. You got to be engaged. So we don't. We're just not able to add value. We're not able to help trucking companies that don't actually care about safety and compliance. So all of our customers actually have pretty decent scores, and we didn't anticipate that. To be honest, we were hoping early on to be able to help the folks that didn't. But what we realized was, if you don't care in the first place, there's not much we can do for you. One thing that we will absolutely say no to is, listen, there's a few ELDs out there that anyone who knows, kind of the dark side of the industry will tell you they know are designed or purpose built to help people kind of mess with their hours of service. There's parts of the country and certain kind of segments of the market where that's more common and less common. But we know it when we see it, and we do steer clear of that. And the reason is simple. Listen, we're trying to help trucking companies be compliant. We're not trying to help people cook the books when it comes to hours of service. So that is something we say a hard no to. We've had customers tell us, listen, that's what I'm doing, and I think you could help me kind of cover my tracks, and that's not what we're here for.
I feel it, man. I feel it. And there are a lot of drivers that either purposely or mistakenly, really, really screw up those logs, the ELD. Maybe they, were very, very excited and they didn't realize that when they started going, they didn't put themselves in drive. They were still in off duty or, just on duty, not driving. When those mistakes happen, are those things that can come off of the record, like, or is that something that's set in stone for 7 years type thing, like a credit score?
You know, it varies. I mean, when it comes to your driver logs, you're required to maintain those as a trucking company for a fixed period of time. And there are about 15 documents or document types that FMCSA regulates the period of time that you have to store them for. So, that's going to vary depending on what you're talking about, whether it's, things varying from your maintenance records, medical cards, MVRs, um, uh,
Your
past
load
CDLs.
documents, everything.
Yeah, your load documents. All of that is regulated. What's actually interesting, if you look at the regulations, just to get a little compliance nerdy for a second, it's actually a pretty short list of documents where FMCSA has a clear definition for how long you have to retain it. And for everything else, what the regulations say is all other documents should be retained in accordance with the trucking company's data retention policy. And we're fortunate to have a lot of customers. I can count on one hand the number of customers which, when we started working with, actually had a data retention policy in place or had even heard
Right.
of a data retention policy. So, you know, a lot of this stuff, it's about making sure that you also are close to the rules and the regulations, or have someone, helping you out, whether that's LogRock or somebody else who does, kind of obsess about that stuff day to day, because the devil's in the details, and you got to stay on top of that. But when it comes to folks that are messing around with things like hours of service or anything else, I want to go back to the point you made at the very beginning, which is that compliance is critical for growth. So there's going to be a certain size that you're going to get to, and different people will give you different numbers. In our experience, it's usually 10, 15, 20 trucks, where if you're messing around with this stuff, or whether intentionally or just because you never took the time to really do it right, it's going to start to limit your ability to grow the business. Either good drivers are going to leave, or you're not going to be able to bring them on, or you're not going to be able to get a good insurance policy, and you're not going to see those discounts that you were hoping for in your commercial automotive liability as you get bigger. That's one of the most important advantages that bigger fleets have over owner ops or smaller fleets out there. We got customers that are paying $5,000 or $6,000 a year for their liability, and we also have customers that are paying $12,000 a year for their liability. That's a big difference in how much you're paying for your insurance, and a lot of that depends on what kind of picture of the company you can present to the insurance company that's giving you that policy. And we work pretty closely with insurance companies because we like to understand what it is that they care about, to see if we can help our customers get those discounts. And it speaks to the fact that if you do it right from the beginning, if you build the right culture in the company, if everybody in the company knows that you're playing straight, you're not messing around with falsifying your logs or anything else, that's the kind of thing which, as you expand, it's going to pay those dividends, because then you're going to be able to take advantage of scale. You're going to be able to attract good drivers, because they're going to look and see, oh, wow, these guys have good scores. If I end up going and driving for them, hauling for them, I'm not going to get inspected every time I pull into a scale house. I'm not going to get slowed down. I'm not going to have a bunch of points on my record because I'm constantly getting, a level 3 inspection, because I can see this is a company that isn't being prioritized for inspection, because they've been doing this right as they've grown. Their insurance is going to be more competitive. They're going to be able to invest that money in better maintenance, which of course then pays dividends over time as well. So it's the kind of thing where, especially as you're trying to grow a business, if you invest in that early on and you do it the right way, it becomes a propellant for growth. It's an accelerant for growth. It lets you grow faster. And if you don't, if you are messing around, with doing things the wrong way from the beginning, the opposite is true. It's going to prevent you from being able to unlock the opportunities that you were hoping to get as a bigger business. And that's going to set you back. It's going to limit you. It's going to put a cap on what you can achieve, a ceiling on what you can achieve.
Oh, I
And
think that's
it's
well
important to
said,
think about
brother. Yeah, well said. I mean, yeah, I agree with that for sure. And do you feel like you've been able to kind of see a company that really wanted to do better, but they didn't know any better? Do you guys do corrective action planning? Is that a part of the services? And have you ever taken a company from a zero to a hero?
that. Zero to a hero, maybe not, but we've definitely taken companies from, man, this could be a lot better. and we know it can be better and we want it to be better, to being better. And that's really the key. I think when you asked about, who do we choose to work with and who do we not, the folks that we can't help are the ones that don't care in the first place. But if you know that, listen, this is, we haven't done a good job of staying on top of our driver qualification files. We have not been great at maintaining our maintenance records. We are missing some inspection reports. Our drug and alcohol program could be better managed. If you own that and you admit that and you tell us, listen, but I want to do it better and I'm serious about that, then yeah, absolutely. We have trucking companies that we've helped close those gaps by doing, very clear, straightforward steps. The first thing is to get everything you do have in one place. And that's a lot of the challenge with compliance, is that, even people who are trying to do it right, they end up jumping between a bunch of different systems. The average company we start working with, the compliance person is jumping between 8 or 9 different systems. They've got their ELD, they've got their FMCSA account, they got their clearinghouse, they've got their data queues, they've got their fuel records, they've got their insurance portal. They're jumping between all of these different systems trying to manage and duplicate all this different information. So the first thing we do is say, listen, let's bring it all into one place. So LogRock integrates with your ELD. We're directly integrated with the FMCSA database, so everything that's on FMCSA pulls directly through into our system. We integrate with your fuel card. We integrate with your driver recruiting solution. We connect into all these systems so that all the data is in one place. And that's really where you're able to make that big impact, because suddenly when you have it in a single place, then you can say, okay, now it's clear to me what's missing, what's expired, what wasn't properly formatted or put together in the first place. And let's build a list. And that's what our system does. It builds a list of tasks. And, compliance isn't sexy, and a list of tasks is not sexy. Nobody likes a to-do list. But at the end of the day, that's the right way to stay on top of it, is to say, all right, it's all in one place. Now I can see what's missing. So step by step, what's the old saying? The way to eat an elephant is piece by piece. Step by step, how can I, one move at a time, one document at a time, clear this up and get to a point now where there are no gaps in my armor? And that's what we do. That's the process that we run through. And for some companies, we find only a few gaps. For some, we find a lot. But as long as you have all that data in one place, you're analyzing it the right way, you're finding those gaps, and you're consistently doing the work to close them and keep them closed, then that's it. That's the battle. And if you can stay on top of that, it isn't even just about surviving an audit. You probably won't get audited in the first place. We work with companies that haven't been audited in 10 or 15 years of operations. And we have other companies we've dealt with that have been audited twice in 2 years. And the reason is FMCSA has a pretty good idea of who they need to be focusing on. And they publish that. If you look into the data that they share, the regulations that they have, it's all a matter of public record. They'll tell you, hey, these are the ones that we're going to end up auditing. These are the ones that we're going to go after. This is the kind of behavior that concerns us. And as long as you can steer clear of that, then you can be in a good place. And it isn't just about crashes. It's about all sorts of aspects of how you manage your paperwork, how you structure your business, how you report, how you do your MCS 150, and that's something we definitely have helped companies with, where, they do get into a much better position in a pretty short space of time. The only thing that we require, like I said, is you have to want it, because we can't do it for you if you don't care in the first place.
Gotcha. Um, what do you feel like the number one reason that you found carriers are not compliant? What's that reason that most of those carriers that who are not compliant kind of share? What is that?
Ooh, hours of service, man, because there's just so much to staying on top of it. And the stakes are so high. So hours of service violations are double weighted. So it's getting missing on hours of service or screwing up your hours of service is the worst thing you can do. It's going to have the biggest impact on your safety scores. But the trick is that it isn't just about, going into your ELD and seeing, okay, no, yeah, 11 hours, no problem. That driver was not exceeding their hours. You've got to also stay on top of what they call secondary data sources. So that's going to be things like your fuel records, your toll records, your BOLs. Because in that, anyone who's coming in and auditing, whether it's an insurance audit, an FMCSA audit, whether you get pulled into a lawsuit and it's a lawyer that's pulling your paperwork, what they're going to do is say, okay, yeah, I see your ELD says you're clean on your hours, you're all good. But what I want to do is double check that against some other data source that lets me validate that that's actually the case. So the first one they're usually going to start with are your fuel logs. And they're going to say, all right, using a fuel card? Yeah, of course I'm using a fuel card. Great. Share with me that spreadsheet that you get once a week, once a month from your fuel card provider. I want to check and see every single time your driver fueled, what was the date and time that they fueled. And then I'm going to go across to your ELD. I'm going to pull that driver's logs, and I'm going to look and see what was their duty status. And if I can find a single example of a driver fueling a truck when they weren't signed in and their duty status wasn't active on their ELD, that tells me that you're falsifying your logs. And so it doesn't matter that if I look at your ELD, it tells me everything's clean, because I know I can prove, because your fuel records show me that actually you were faking it. So you can have the cleanest ELD in the world, but if you're not also checking that against your fuel logs, against your BOLs, oh, look, this drivers said they were loading at 1:25 p.m. Central Time, and yet their ELD said that they were in their sleeper berth at 1:25 Central Time. Were they loading the truck in their sleep? That's a hard question to answer. And unfortunately, it's a lot to stay on top of. Driver passed through a toll, but the driver wasn't signed into their ELD. Was it, was the truck driving itself? How did we get there? So that happens, unfortunately, very often. It can be by accident, it can be intentional. Unfortunately, by the time that it's been uncovered, it doesn't really matter whether it was an accident or not, because now you're facing, a logbook falsification violation, and that's going to have one of the biggest impact on your safety scores that any single violation can have. And anyone at FMCSA will tell you that 80% of the impact on the safety score comes from 20% of your violations. Not all violations are created equal. There are some violations that are so severe that they end up having the lion's share of the impact on your scores. And I would say, in our experience, that logbook violations and logbook falsification is top of that list.
Gotcha. How often do you feel like personal conveyance is the excuse for somebody trying to justify that situation?
Oh man, it's I like to say that if the PC of political correctness, that's much less complicated than the PC of personal conveyance. If anyone tells you they can understand how personal conveyance actually works and how those rules are actually supposed to be applied, then send them to me, because I still haven't met that person, and I talk to a lot of people who work for FMCSA, and they'll be the first people to tell you we're not really sure how PC works. So
Right.
thing with PC, here's my nickel's worth of free advice on personal conveyance. This is one of the best kind of insights we ever had, and we build it into our software, and all of our customers take advantage of it. But I'll share it with you here, Joey, and with your listeners, because it's a really good one that I think more people should be aware of. When it comes to PC, as everybody knows, it is extremely difficult to determine, was this or was this not a legitimate use of personal conveyance, because the regs are just not that clear. And you can make an argument and say, oh, I think it was. The officer can say it wasn't. He said, she said, who knows? What we heard, and what we then validated, and if you check in the regulations, it's 100% true. It was an insight from a former FMCSA investigator, and he said, look, make it simple. He said, if you look in the regulations, you'll see the following. If the use of personal conveyance did not exceed 50 miles in distance driven, or 60 minutes in the time that the driver pushed PC, for a single instance of pushing PC on the ELD. So the total distance driven and the total amount of time that elapsed from the minute that the driver switched on personal conveyance to the minute that they switched it off. If in between the switching it on and switching it off and changing their duty status, they didn't drive more than 50 miles, and they didn't drive for more than 60 minutes, even if it can be proven that it was not a legitimate use of PC, the the violation, or the citation that comes out of that has $0 value and zero impact on your safety scores. It's considered to be a minor infraction. However, if you get just the other side of that, if you drive 51 miles or for 61 minutes with PC on, and it's determined through whatever crazy rules around PC exist that it wasn't a legitimate use of PC, now you're falsifying your logbooks and you're in all sorts of trouble. So that magic number is 50 miles in 60 minutes. It's not to say that people should be using PC for illegitimate uses, but it is to say that no matter whether it's legitimate or not, if you keep it under 50 miles and under 60 minutes, the risk that you face is drastically reduced. So yes, you're absolutely right, Jory. PC is a big piece of that puzzle, and it is not simple. But the best answer I can give you on how to stay on top of it is keep it under 50 miles and keep it under 60 minutes.
You know, I worked with the way I got my game, my dispatch game is I actually was a W-2 employee working for an industrial supplier, and they happened to have about 700 trucks. And not a single one of their drivers were ever approved to use PC because of what you just said, of just how challenging it is, or it was, because this was, 2018-ish, how challenging it was to justify or convince or prove or whatever, whatever. So I appreciate you at least giving us something to be able to hold on to. 50 miles, 60 minutes. If you're under that, you might be okay for just a little, stern talking to, but above it, just be prepared for all of the infractions that are going to follow. So I truly appreciate you giving us something easy to digest. And, you know, when it comes down to it, violation wise, I can go on someone's safer score, their safer snapshot, and I can scroll down to see things about their trucks, about their drivers, about their trucks, and this out of service percentage. Matter of fact, what is the difference between a truck being put out of service and a driver being put out of service? Like, what's that difference?
From the trucking company owner perspective, there isn't really one. And the reason is simple. If any of your drivers or your equipment are put out of service, first of all, you're facing a cost. Because if you've got a driver who's out of service but equipment that isn't out of service, well, you know, the likelihood that you got another driver just sitting around ready to jump in that truck is pretty low. So odds are, if you've lost the driver, the truck is also probably the truck may not officially be out of service, but in fact, it's not going to be rolling. It's not going to be generating revenue for you. And the same is also true, if the asset goes out of service, but the driver is fine. Well, that doesn't really matter because the odds that you got another truck sitting around nearby that driver can just hop right in and keep going, also are pretty low. So losing one probably means that you lose the other, just from an operational perspective. From a safety score perspective, and from a perspective of the fines and the impact that that has on the likelihood of you getting audited by FMCSA, I wouldn't say that one is necessarily much better or much worse than the other. If your trucks or your trailers or chassis are being put out of service, that's a strong indicator to FMCSA that you're not taking maintenance seriously. And maintenance is a huge predictor of crash risk. If your drivers are being put out of service, it probably means that there's some pretty serious infractions going on. And of course, the driver is the other big piece of the equation in predicting the likelihood of a crash. So in either case, that's going to be a concern to FMCSA. And if you do, God forbid, get pulled into a lawsuit post accident where someone's trying to sue you and prove that the trucking company was liable, a jury is not going to dismiss concerns about the equipment. If someone who's trying to go after you can convince the jury that you were not properly maintaining your equipment, and the way that they prove that is that your equipment kept getting put out of service, it's not going to matter that you got the best drivers in the world, because they're going to say, listen, these guys, they're going to make it look like the tires are falling off your equipment. And they're going to put that in front of a jury that's going to think, oh man, well, next time it's going to be me or my kids that are going to get hit by that truck. And they're going to try to punish you for that. And the same thing for the driver. If you can have the best equipment, best maintenance in the world, but if your drivers are regularly getting put out of service, they're going to present that as, listen, these guys were not taking safety and compliance seriously. They didn't care, and their drivers were pirates. Were all over the road. So, in our view, from a compliance perspective and really from a revenue perspective, I'm not sure there's a huge difference. You really want to steer clear of both.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I can definitely understand that. You did mention just the legal side of things. In this age of nuclear verdicts, why is it important for not only trucking companies, but compliance companies to really, really, really be in tune with and have the support of legal professionals that are in this game on the trucking defense side of things? Like, why is it so important these days?
Unfortunately, the reason is simple. And the reason is that every single month, the number of lawsuits against trucking companies increases. And the reason for that, unfortunately, is also dead simple. Whether it's the billboard lawyers that you see on the side of the highway or the folks
Yeah,
that are, maybe a little bit more professional, they are making money off of trucking companies,
big
period.
bucks.
I wish it was more complicated. I wish it was more nuanced. I wish I could tell you that it was driven by, good intentions or people trying to make the road safer. It is not. This is like many things in America, my friend. This is about lawyers making money.
Right, right.
and and unfortunately, the American Transportation Research Institute, it's a great organization, nonprofit. All they do is research trucking and try to figure out what's going on. They're a true kind of truly just curious charitable organization. They did an amazing study on lawsuits involving trucking companies. And what they found is that the average cost just to settle a lawsuit, to say, listen, me, my insurance company, our lawyers, we don't even want to take this to court. We may be right, we may be wrong, doesn't matter. We just want to make this go away. The average cost to settle a lawsuit is now $450,000. And that says nothing of the nuclear verdicts, these multi-million dollar jury awards that you risk getting into if you don't settle and you try to take it to court. So the lawyers on the other side go, wow, okay, I can keep 30, 40, 50, 60% of that settlement depending on, the deal that I made with the person who was injured or the family of the person who was killed in the accident. I can make 40, 50, 60, 70% of that $500,000 just by throwing a lawsuit at this trucking company. How many hours does it take me to prepare that? I don't know. At that point, it doesn't even matter if you're making $200,000 or $300,000 just by throwing a case at him and it settles. It doesn't even go to court. Think about that. A lawyer who doesn't even have to go to court and can make $200,000 or $300,000 from a single case. I mean, I hate to say it, but who wouldn't do that, right? So unfortunately, there's just so much money for them to be made that attacking trucking companies is a very profitable business. And there's just going to be more of it unless and until the law is changed in the US. And here's, an interesting fact. The reason that a lot of these lawyers got into this is that they used to be the same guys who were suing doctors, medical doctors, and medical insurance companies. But the doctors lobby, the people, the American Medical Association, who lobby on behalf of doctors in Washington and in the individual states, they were able to change the law and they made it much harder to sue doctors. I don't know if you noticed this. I grew up in the 90s and people used to talk about, suing doctors, people suing doctors, suing medical insurance companies. You hear less about it these days. And the reason is that they changed the law. They made it harder to sue doctors. So these lawyers, they changed gears. And instead of learning how to recreate a medical procedure, they learned how to recreate a truck accident. And unfortunately, there is so much money to be made doing that, that not only, is it happening more and more every month, but the expectation is that that's even just going to accelerate going forward. So there is even arguably more to be concerned about with the risk of a lawsuit than even with the risk of an audit. And of course, the two are connected because it's the fact that these lawsuits are now involving brokers. C.H. Robinson is now having to defend a case where they were sued because they tendered a load to a trucking company where the driver was involved in an accident. Unfortunately, there was a fatality. And C.H. Robinson is being sued by these lawyers for being negligent in tendering the load to that trucking company. C.H. Robinson doesn't employ any drivers. They don't own any trucks, and they're being held accountable for an accident. So what's going to happen now, you're going to see more and more of this, is that brokers and shippers are not even going to touch a trucking company that has a conditional status with a 10-foot pole. The minute they see anything that tells them that you have issues with compliance or with safety, they're going to steer well clear of you because they can't afford the risk, because the lawyers are now going after the shippers and the brokers as well. So, and that, of course, then means that the risk of an audit is even more important because a bad audit result can cost you access to premium freight. So all of it comes back, not all of it, but a lot of it comes back to these lawsuits, this litigation. And unfortunately, a lot of that just comes back to lawyers trying to make money. And as long as it's as easy as it is for them to make a couple $100,000 on a single case, they're going to keep doing it.
I hear you. I hear you. And, fortunately, unfortunately, I have had exposure to. I used to work in big law, so I saw all of
Ah,
the
okay. You,
rates.
you know how it is, or you're a
Yeah,
recovering
man.
lawyer.
I was the guy that was coming up with fee arrangements that made everybody feel like they were winning on both sides. So I know how much was being paid out, and what those billable hours were. So
Yep.
unfortunately, everything that you just said makes way too much sense for me. And
I wish it wasn't
go
true. I
ahead.
wish it wasn't true. I wish it wasn't true,
Right.
but it is.
Right, man. So that's why the question was more so, why do trucking companies and compliance companies need to have close relationships with legal professionals so that they are operating right? I mean, I know that you have your group of folks that you can pull information from. Do you feel like there have been any conversations you've had with your legal professional friends that you feel like have shaped some of the ways you even operate your company?
Absolutely. I'll give you a specific example. I mentioned before that one of the things we do is we create a list of tasks for the safety manager or for whoever at the trucking company is trying to stay on top of safety and compliance. based on the analysis of the data that we do, which is where we find, what's missing, what's expired, what's about to expire, where are those issues. Now, whenever one of our customers completes a task, LogRock stores and makes a record of that task being completed, that work being done, basically of that problem being solved. And the reason that we do that is because lawyers who defend trucking companies have told us that one of the number one things they wish they had had when they were defending a company that was, was an honest, good trucking company, but got pulled into one of these lawsuits and was being, painted and made to look like a bad actor. One of the number one things they say they wish they had had was something, anything they could use to put in front of a jury and to prove and say, listen, these guys were working on safety and compliance every single day. And it's a lie. It's demonstrably false for you to claim otherwise. And here's the proof. Here's examples of all the good work that they were doing all along. The problem is that, like most normal human beings, safety managers don't, throughout their day stop and make a note and keep a record of every single little piece of work that they do. But our system does. And what that means is that if you do get pulled into a lawsuit and someone's trying to claim that you didn't take safety and compliance seriously, we can actually go back and show, listen, every single day or every single week, these folks were chipping away at this. Here's an example of them, replacing a missing document. Here's an example of them making sure that their drug and alcohol program was complete. Here's an example of them filing an updated MVR. So, I can prove to you that it's false for you to claim that they didn't take safety and compliance seriously. And it wouldn't have occurred to us, honestly, it's not something that would have occurred to us to build that into our software if we hadn't heard from the lawyers who defend trucking companies telling us, we wish we had this. So if you could build this in, then my clients are going to be in a better position if they get pulled into a lawsuit, because then I've got proof that they were taking safety and compliance seriously, and I can shut some of this nonsense down before it starts.
Right, right. Look, is there ever a time where a compliance company can be held liable for the actions of a carrier? And I'll season it a little bit more with the fact that um, dispatchers who are listening to this, if you knowingly or unknowingly accept a load where that driver is unfit, whether those hours of service are being violated and maybe that truck is jacked up and something happens. Well, just like Hunter just said, insurance companies, they're coming for everybody, So that's a dispatcher can get roped into that. So my question is, can a compliance company get wrapped into roped into that situation?
The short answer is yes. And that's something that we're very conscious of, is making sure that the information that we're storing and the way that we're managing it is such that we don't create additional risk for our customers. So we're very thoughtful about the way that we structure and we present that information, because we know that that can get pulled in. Now, in terms of what the regulations say, if you administer a trucking company's drug and alcohol policy and their program, and especially if you are registered as a third party agent helping them manage their clearinghouse, then you're not just liable from a legal perspective in terms of the risk of a lawsuit. You're actually also potentially held liable by the Department of Transportation. So let's say you're running Jory Trucking and you're a LogRock customer, and we're officially registered to help you with your manage your clearinghouse as a third party administrator of the clearinghouse work for Jory Trucking. If that's the case, I am responsible from the DOT's perspective, and the DOT can come in and audit me as the third party administrator that's managing your clearinghouse. Beyond that, listen, the likelihood or the number of times that a compliance provider ends up actually getting sued is pretty low. And the reason for that isn't that you're not liable. The reason for that isn't that you're magically immune. The reason for that, unfortunately, is as simple as this. It's that very few compliance companies are making as much money as a big trucking company or as a broker. And therefore, it's just a less attractive target for the lawyers because they don't think they can get as much out of it.
I got you.
That's kind of how that plays out usually.
Okay, cool. And look, and further along with this legal side of things, and um, do you know of anything that's up on the horizon? Any changes in regulation, policies, anything that you would want to mention now that our listeners, our motor carriers, Mike can start to prepare for now. Is there anything new that you've heard of?
There's a couple things out there cooking. One of them is the idea of this requirement that there's going to need to be a speed gauge or a speed limiter on the truck, which a lot of drivers will tell you is the last thing they're going to ever agree to, and that's in the comment stage right now. But Jory, I want to call out. I really liked something you did at the top of the call when I was still trying to figure out how to get my microphone to work,
Oh
which was
yeah.
encouraging all of your listeners, whenever you see a proposed rule from FMCSA, whether it impacts dispatchers, trucking companies, or anybody else, go in and comment. And a lot of people don't know this, but first of all, there's plenty of places you can get updates and get notified when FMCSA is proposing a new rule. But you also, as anyone in the industry, have a right to go in and comment. And by law, FMCSA is required to read and consider your comment. And the more comments get submitted, the more time they have to take to consider these rules. And the more comments that express concern or worries about how this is going to impact your business, the more time that they then have to spend figuring out, how can I balance that out? Maybe we need to soften this. Maybe we don't do this the way that we were thinking. So I know in this time and in this age that we live in, people can get a little bit cynical about whether anyone in government maybe hears what you're saying or cares about you. When it comes to FMCSA, I'll give them credit; they do a pretty good job of reviewing every single comment that comes in, and if they're consistently hearing from the industry, not just through a lobbyist in Washington, but through people actually taking the time to submit comments and say, "Listen, this is going to hurt my business," they'll take that seriously. They will consider that. The challenge I think that we have as an industry is that too few people are actually taking the time to be active and to contribute to that conversation and to raise those concerns. And if you don't comment, if you don't share your voice and how it's going to impact your business, then in my opinion, you kind of lose the right to complain once the rule comes into force, because you had a chance to do that and you didn't take it. So I think it's great, Joy, that you're encouraging people to be active there. And we work with all of our customers. We're constantly sending out emails notifying them of new rule proposals, things that FMCSA is thinking about, and encouraging our customers to jump on and comment and share their views, because FMCSA will hear your voice if you take the time to make those comments, and we encourage everyone to do that. And I think that it's great that you do the same.
Oh, thank you, brother. Yeah, we have to. I mean, this is definitely the opportunity to speak now or forever hold your peace. So you definitely got to take advantage of your rights. And with that, with the one that I started this episode about, which is the finally coming back to determine, dispatch companies and their right in the industry and when they need to get a brokerage authority just based on whatever activities they're participating in. With your clients, do you feel like there's a good amount that use independent dispatch services, or do they have in-house dispatchers, or is it just not something they need?
It's a good mix, but I'll take this opportunity to share, and this is something that we haven't shared publicly, but I'm happy to mention here, just with a select group of your listeners, is that we're actually in the process of launching kind of a pilot or a test program where we're going to have a custom compliance solution that we allow or we offer to dispatchers, that they can then say to the owner operators, the drivers that they're dispatching for, independent dispatchers, I'm talking specifically about independent dispatchers, to be able to say, hey, if you want, we can also manage your compliance for you. And to have that solution then be powered by LogRock, so that as a dispatcher, you don't have to worry too much about the actual nuts and bolts of how that gets implemented, because LogRock will kind of power that for you. But it's an additional service that you can offer to the drivers that you're dispatching. And that's something that we're just about to launch a pilot for. So we have a few dispatch businesses, entrepreneurial, small. We're not talking about gigantic, big corporate, whatever, but kind of honest, proper dispatching services that know their drivers and are looking for an additional service that they could offer their drivers as a way to retain, as a way to kind of add that extra value through what they provide. And LogRock is powering that, and we've designed it specifically kind of to meet the needs and to work within the constraints of that kind of dispatcher driver, dispatcher owner operator relationship. So we're just getting started testing that out now. But if there's anyone out there that's interested among your listeners in trying that out and being able to go to the drivers that they dispatch and say, hey, would you like me to also manage compliance for you? Then let us know, and we'd love to include you in that pilot.
Nice. Well, hey man, I'm happy that you were able to share that here. I'm pretty sure you're going to get some interest because being able to add more value, more services is definitely what the professional dispatcher is all about. Because at the end of the day, I don't even call myself a dispatcher at this point. I'm a consultant. I'm consulting on all these different things. It just so happens that one of the main aspects is lane selection and negotiating rates for your daily loads and all that kind of stuff. But being able to provide more value is definitely what the professional dispatching organization is looking to do. So, if you guys are listening and that's something that you want to be able to be a part of, definitely reach out to this brother. Um, Question, because when we were talking about your entry into the supply chain, and even those brothers who were in the law profession and a banker, they had no experience with this industry before they decided that they were going to go all in and start something from the ground up. And in the golden age of trucking, there were a lot of people that just had a lot of money that wanted to be a part of the industry, whether it was just as an investor or whatever, But they didn't have the formal training or the pedigree of working in a trucking company to understand what's the norm, what's the expectations. Do you have does LogRock have a hand holding type of service where you would be able to be more than the tech solution, but more so the coach in regards to what they need to do on a daily basis? Are you guys venturing into that, or is that not your lane?
Ooh, that's a good one. So the short answer is we're testing it out. And the reason that I can't give you a better answer than that is that we still don't yet know how that test is going to go. So we had a good number of customers that said to us, listen, we like to say that compliance with federal regulations is like doing the dishes. Nobody wants to do it, but if you don't do it, you're going to have a real problem. And that our software, the LogRock software, is like a dishwasher. It's going to get you a much more consistent result, a much better result with much less work. But the thing with a dishwasher is you still got to load the dishes, you still got to turn it on, you still got to unload it. And some of our customers said to us, listen, I don't even have somebody to do that. So I want you not just to give me the dishwasher, I want you to actually, load it and unload it for me. And so we have launched a program where we're testing that out. What we're looking to see is there are a lot of folks out there that do that right now. Ex state police, ex FMCSA, folks that have that expertise, that have that experience, and will go hands on with a trucking company and say, listen, if you, for whatever reason, haven't been able to hire a great safety manager, a great safety director, a great compliance director who's going to do this for you, and you need someone to stay on top of it, to manage it, to do it for you, I can do that. I can be that person, that outsourced safety provider. What we're working on right now is figuring out, can we do that in a way that's meaningfully better, whether that's cheaper, more efficient, better quality, fewer mistakes than the folks that are doing that right now. And I wish I could tell you I had the answer to that, but we're still figuring it out. So we have a few trucking companies that are kind of testing that out with us, and we're on this journey of learning and trying to understand, are we able to do this significantly better than the others that are providing it right now? Because when we first built out the software, the compliance software, there was really nobody else doing, and I still don't think there's anybody else doing exactly what we do in terms of like true complete compliance software. But there's a lot of people out there that will offer you compliance and safety consulting services. So our question is, can we do that in a way that's meaningfully better? Maybe the answer is no, but we're in the process of figuring that out right now. But that's another one where if there are trucking company owners or safety managers out there that are are listening or are part of the network here, of folks that are around your listeners, who want to try something different but don't have the resources to manage the software themselves. They wish we would just do it for them. We are allowing trucking companies that reach out to us to take part in that pilot and to test that out. And we do hope to get to a point where we can say, yeah, we can do this better, we can do this differently, whether it's cheaper or more efficient than the incumbents. But we're still on that journey, but eager to welcome anyone who's willing to kind of test that out with us and see what we can learn together.
Gotcha. I got you. All right. Well, I completely feel you there, brother. And I guess this right here is going to be my last question, but I'm notorious for coming up with more right at the last second. But this is a little different, man. I mean, because the way in which this conversation is gone, you're definitely servicing the trucking community. These motor carriers that are out here, day in day out, working hard, looking to scale their companies. I mean, is there ever going to be a point where you feel like you market your services to a broker, to a brokerage? Like, is that something that you're going to consider in the future?
Oh, that is a very good one. I had a call today with I would say maybe one of the most recognized brands in digital brokerage, not the one that I used to work for, but one of our competitors. And we've had some inbound interest from a couple of the other big ones. Um, here's my very honest but very direct answer to that. Our customers, first and foremost, are trucking companies. And the reason that we like the idea of working with dispatchers, for example, and the reason that we're launching this pilot program for dispatchers is that ultimately we see the dispatcher as an extension of the trucking company, because the dispatcher and the driver, their interests are 95% aligned, right? Of course, they're different roles and different responsibilities, but at the end of the day, if the dispatcher does, well, the driver does well, and usually vice versa. The challenge with brokers is that there are scenarios out there where you could do something that's really helpful to a broker that actually is detrimental or is not helpful to the trucking company or to the dispatcher. And so we're open to a partnership with a broker, but only in a scenario where the way that partnership is designed makes sure that 100% of the time, whatever we're doing with that broker is also beneficial to the trucking company and to the dispatcher. Because if it's not, we're not interested, because at the end of the day, we're here to serve the trucking companies and the folks that help them move more freight. And a broker will say that that is true of them, but sometimes those interests aren't completely aligned, and we want to make sure that we stay on the trucking side of that equation, if for no other reason that those are the folks that we're grateful have trusted us with with their business, with their documents, with their information. And we're going to stay loyal to that side of the industry. But if there's a way to work with a broker where it's always also good for the fleet, we're down to try that. We just are very cautious about making sure that we don't get into a scenario where we're helping brokers and doing that at the expense of the trucking companies that we're grateful to, because they've allowed us to build our business.
Yes, sir. Hey, man. Well, I think that was a great response to that question. I mean, that was an awesome response. And was there anything that you wanted to mention, state to the listeners that we didn't cover? And if also segue into any final remarks that you may have.
It is a testament, Joy, to how well you know this space, that everybody in my team makes fun of me that I like to talk, and I really like to talk about our business. But I've got nothing left to say. You have hit all the most important points.
Oh,
So I
awesome.
appreciate that. You know what you're talking about, man. I appreciate that. There's a lot of people around supply chain that it's all bluster and no details, but you know your stuff. So I think we've covered all the main points. Listen, what I'll say is the following: anyone who's either working with a trucking company or who's in dispatch and wants to get involved in this pilot program that we're launching, it isn't public. We haven't shared it on the website or anyone else. It's been kind of invitation only. But if there are folks here, among your listeners and your network, that are in dispatch and would be interested in offering their drivers or the folks that they're dispatching for, those owner ops, also the ability to have the dispatch service manage compliance, but where that would be powered by LogRock, so it doesn't become an additional burden to folks on the dispatch side. We are open to inviting folks into that pilot and having them be among the first to test that out. And of course, there's some benefits, to being an early adopter of that. So if you're interested in that, shoot me an email. My email is just hunter@logrock.com, LOGROCK.com. Come to our website, check it out, but also feel free to shoot me an email and I'll connect you with the folks in our team that are running that pilot program for dispatchers. And for anyone who's on the trucking side and is whether you're an independent driver or got a fleet safety manager. Again, also, please feel free to shoot us an email. We're very fortunate to be growing the business fast. We're very proud to have never lost a customer. And we think that's because, we only do one thing. We help trucking companies with compliance. And if it's something we think you think we can help you with, then please don't hesitate to reach out. We'd love to talk.
Well, perfect, perfect, perfect. Well, hey, man, I think that this was a very, very, very informative session. Just talking about the industry, talking about your company. I'm very pleased with the outcome. So I just want to say thank you for joining me. And, if there's ever anything I can do to help, feel free to reach out to me. For the folks who have been tuning in with your boy for the last 2 years, I truly appreciate the support. We've definitely grown to nearly 30,000 members, and we're still seeing how far we can take this bad boys, what type of value we can add to your daily operation. So, as always, tune in on Monday at 7:30 a.m. as we discuss with Freightways Sonar team where you should position your trucks to take advantage of the market. And next week, what's the session next week? Next week we are getting into insurance, but specifically port operations and why insurance and port operations are tied. They're hand in hand, and you might not realize it, but I'm very excited about that conversation next week. So if you guys need anything from me, holla at me. Starting to get cold out here, so bundle up. If you have some extra clothes, some extra jackets, please donate them to those in need. And soon I'm going to be saying happy holidays. But Hunter, again, brother, I appreciate you for your time, and everybody just have a blessed week. All right.
Thank you for having me, Joy. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yes, sir. All right now.